In popular conception, sheep are often thought of as simple, docile, and mindless. Calling someone a sheep is an insult. Why? Because it's meant to imply that the person doesn't know how to think for themselves. But as we'll see in this video, this perception of sheep as unintelligent is wildly unfair and completely divorced from reality. By the way, this video is a project that I did in collaboration with Natalie Fulton, who's posting a similar version of the video to her own channel. So definitely go check out her channel if you aren't familiar with her work. Before we dive into the science, I wanted to give you a sense for who sheep are as individuals. So I'll let Natalie tell you about Sammy, a sheep whose story is particularly inspiring for us.
Sammy now lives at Rescued Friend Sanctuary in Fort Collins, Colorado, but she hasn't always been so fortunate. It's pretty clear that she suffered some past trauma because she's afraid of most people and it takes years to earn her trust. Luckily, she has an easier time connecting with non-human animals, a trait that may have saved her life. Sammy's rescue story beautifully emphasizes the profound empathy animals have for each other, even across species. One fateful day, a woman named Lisa was hiking with her dog through the pasture where Sammy lived. Lisa was there to spread the ashes of her recently deceased dog, and her heart was heavy with grief. The farmer kindly offered to let Lisa see the animals, but she declined because she knew they were destined for the slaughterhouse, and she thought seeing them would make her feel sad. However, Lisa's dog had a different idea. He suddenly took off running toward the sheep. Most of them scattered in fear, but Sammy stayed put. As Lisa's dog approached the fence, Sammy began gently nuzzling with him, as if offering comfort and understanding. Moved by this extraordinary interaction, Lisa felt like it was a sign that her dog was leading her toward an animal who needed help. She convinced the farmer to let her rescue Sammy and named him after her recently deceased dog. While Sammy lived in a picturesque pasture, her next stop would have been a crowded feedlot, and then she would make her way to a slaughterhouse. But thanks to Lisa following her intuition, Sammy was spared from that grim fate. Instead of becoming another nameless victim of the slaughterhouse, Sammy now has a loving home and a promising new beginning.
Sheep form deep social bonds with one another, and this has led them to evolve some pretty sophisticated abilities for navigating the complexities of social life. For example, just like humans, sheep's brains are specially adapted to be exceptionally good at recognizing faces. They have to be, because sheep have different relationships with different members of their flock, so they have to be able to tell who's who. Not only do they recognize other sheep in real life, but they can recognize them in photos too. In one experiment, researchers trained sheep to discriminate between front view photographs of two other sheep that they had never seen before. Then the researchers showed the sheep new photos of the same individuals, but this time the photos were taken from a side view angle, and the sheep were able to still tell them apart with no further training. Not only that, but when sheep were trained to recognize the faces of 3-month-old lambs, they could still tell who was who when shown photos of the same lambs at 1 month of age, even though sheep are considerably bigger and have a lot more wool on their face at 3 months compared to 1 month. In another experiment, scientists trained sheep to discriminate 25 different pairs of sheep faces in photos. Then they showed the sheep the same faces 2 years later, and they still recognized them. That showed that sheep can recognize at least 50 other sheep faces and remember them for at least 2 years. Sheep also have impressive learning abilities in other areas. In one study, researchers fed sheep 3 different types of toxin-laced food, which made them feel sick in different ways. And they also gave the sheep 3 different types of medicine, each of which alleviated the symptoms of one of the types of food. And the sheep learned which medicine was most appropriate for each set of symptoms, and afterwards they chose to self-medicate with whichever medicine was most appropriate for the symptoms that they were feeling. So that shows that they may understand the causal relationship between taking medicine and feeling better. Contrary to what you might imagine, grazing animals like sheep don't just mindlessly eat plants as if they're all the same. They're actually very selective about which plants they eat and have a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of plant taxonomy. Not only can sheep discriminate between different plants at the species level, but they also understand that 2 different species of plants that are from the same family are more similar to one another than 2 different species of plants from different families. Sheep are remarkably sensitive and very emotionally complex. For example, they form expectations about the future and get frustrated if those expectations aren't met. When lambs were rewarded for completing a task, but the reward was less than they expected based on past experience, their heart rates went up and they moved around more, indicating emotional arousal associated with frustration or disappointment. Sheep form strong emotional bonds with one another, And when they're separated from their social companions, they show clear signs of distress, including calling loudly, pacing back and forth, and exhibiting an increased heart rate. Just showing a sheep a photo of another sheep that she knows measurably reduces these signs of distress, but showing her a photo of, for example, a goat that she doesn't know has no effect. In humans, trauma bonding is a well-known phenomenon where people who go through a traumatic experience together often form strong bonds much more quickly than they would in other circumstances. Recently, scientists discovered that the same phenomenon occurs in sheep. The researchers put sheep who had only known each other briefly through an experience that was meant to be traumatic, being herded by a sheepdog, transported on a truck, and roughly handled by a human. Then, they gave the sheep the choice of spending time with a sheep who had gone through that traumatic experience with them, or another sheep who they had known for the same amount of time, but who didn't go through the traumatic experience. The sheep spent more time hanging out with a sheep who had gone through the traumatic experience with them, indicating that when sheep go through a difficult experience together, it strengthens their bond, just like in humans. One of the strongest bonds between sheep is the bond between a mother and her lamb. And I'll switch back to Natalie here so she can give you a specific example of that.
We saw this firsthand at Rescued Friends Sanctuary with two of Sammy's companions, a mother-daughter pair named Dolores and Eleanor. Most sheep are separated from their mothers at only 2 months of age and then sent to a feedlot, but luckily, Dolores and Eleanor were found at a small homestead. The homesteaders didn't realize how difficult it would be to raise animals, so Dolores and Eleanor were severely neglected, but luckily the humans' laziness prevented them from being sent to a slaughterhouse. When Dolores and Eleanor arrived at the sanctuary, Dolores instantly became the sanctuary mom. She made friends with all the other animals regardless of species, and greets every newcomer with enthusiasm and friendliness. Even Sammy, who had a hard time bonding with other animals, felt safe with Dolores. During shearing, which stresses sheep out, Dolores always goes first to help calm the other sheep down. Then she stays with all of them until the shearing is over. She also loves following people around. Even though she's now an adult, Eleanor still has a strong bond with her mother. They're each other's closest companions and spend a lot of time hanging out together.
The bond between a ewe and her lamb starts on day one. Mothers and lambs recognize each other by sight, smell, and the sound of one another's voice, and they become extremely distressed if separated from one another. If given the opportunity to do so, they will often maintain a strong bond with one another even after weaning, as evidenced by the close bond that Dolores and Eleanor share to this day. Sheep can also form cross-species bonds with humans, just like dogs and cats. Multiple studies have found that when sheep are groomed or gently pet by their favorite human, they relax their ears and their heart rates go down, which are signs associated with positive emotions. They can also tell the difference between different people, and they can recognize familiar human faces in a photograph, even if they've never seen a photo of that person before. Sheep are also very perceptive of the emotions of others. Just like we display our emotions with the expressions of our face, sheep display their emotions with the positions of their ears. For example, when sheep are content, they relax their ears and don't move them very much. When they're afraid, they pin their ears back. When they're angry, they point their ears straight up. And when they're surprised, one ear points up and the other points down. Studies have shown that sheep can recognize these emotions in another sheep's facial expressions. They can also tell when another sheep is in pain. Mother sheep pay more attention to their lambs when their lambs show signs of pain, which may indicate a capacity for empathy. Over 2 million sheep are slaughtered every year in the US alone, the vast majority when they're less than a year old. It may seem like this is an inevitable reality that will never change, but it doesn't have to be. We can use democratic processes like ballot initiatives to ban slaughterhouses in our communities. I volunteer with an organization called Pro Animal Future, and we got more than enough signatures from ordinary voters to put a measure on the ballot this November that would ban slaughterhouses from operating in the city of Denver. In a form of poetic justice, if this ballot initiative passes, it will shut down the very slaughterhouse where Sammy would have ended up if she hadn't been rescued, which also happens to be the largest lamb slaughterhouse in the country. And if our campaign succeeds, we plan to expand the tactic to other jurisdictions and eventually change the entire food system. The concept of a slaughter-free world might sound like a radical idea, but not only is it possible, it's critical for the health of the planet. Land use for agriculture is hands down the biggest cause of biodiversity loss, and animal agriculture accounts for 80% of global agricultural land, even though it provides less than 20% of the calories that people eat. Not only that, but a 2020 study in the prestigious journal Science found that even if fossil fuel emissions were stopped immediately, it would be impossible to limit global warming to the target set by the Paris Climate Agreement without significant transformation of our global food system, which includes significantly reducing our reliance on animal agriculture. The world today is a very different place than it was when our parents and grandparents were young, and we need to evolve with the times. We have far more people to feed than we ever did, and the climate crisis and global extinction crisis are spiraling out of control. We also now know a lot more about the cognitive and emotional sophistication of animals like sheep, which makes it much harder to justify killing them and treating them like commodities for the sake of products that we don't even need. Instead of condemning billions of sensitive individuals to a brutal and untimely death in a slaughterhouse, let's work to transition our food system to a compassionate plant-based model that we know will be better for us and the rest of the planet too. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.